Hey, greetings everyone. Lieutenant Colonel Allen West, gubernatorial candidate for the Republican nomination here in the great state of Texas. You know, a lot of people would say, why does a governor need to have a cognizant knowledge and understanding of foreign policy? Well, first of all, it's very important here in the state of Texas because the state of Texas has a thing called a border, which is 1,254 miles long. Now, think about that. 1,254-mile border. That's larger than a lot of other countries, being in Europe or even over in the Middle East where I served some time. And how interesting it is that we can go over and we can deploy our troops to protect the borders of other countries, like I did 30 years ago to protect the border of Kuwait against the Iraqi invasion under Saddam Hussein. But yet, for some odd reason, we can't take care of our border here. Now, when you look at what is going on our border, I want you to start thinking about this word, insurgency. Because too many of us are sitting around and we just think that we're dealing with just a bunch of, guys that have a crime syndicate. But that's not really what the cartels are. The cartels are, without a doubt, a transnational, narco-criminal terrorist organization. Now, why do I say all of these things? Because first of all, transnational, they are working with other actors all across the world. The thing is, narco-criminal, without a doubt, the drug trafficking issue, but also the human and sex trafficking crimes and issues that we're facing here in the great state of Texas. Another thing is they're a terrorist organization. They're already working with people like Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas. If you start to look at some of the tactics that they're using to terrorize people in Mexico, very much so resembling some of the things that we see coming over from the Middle East. And so we need to start thinking of them as an insurgency. And don't think that what has happened in Afghanistan cannot eventually have a ramification for us here in the state of Texas. Because those people that Barack Obama and Joe Biden and all the rest of the progressive socialists left, that they were released out of Guantanamo Bay, well, they're back in control now over in Afghanistan. And all of those ISIS fighters, Al-Qaeda fighters that we took off the battlefield in Afghanistan, they've been released now. And if you don't believe that Al-Qaeda, Taliban, ISIS will work together with these guys, because they all are about insurgencies. And see, the thing that we have to come to understand is that we're not fighting against nation states. We're fighting against non-uniform, non-state belligerent actors. That's the difference. And that's the key part of an insurgency. And just the same as when I was over in Afghanistan, what do you think that the Taliban used to funnel all and feed all of their actions? Well, over there, the Taliban, they used the opium trade. And what do we see the cartels using over here? Well, fentanyl, methamphetamines, and marijuana. So that's why I say we're dealing with an insurgency. Now, the other thing you have to understand when we talk about fentanyl, guess where that fentanyl is coming from? That fentanyl is coming from our number one geopolitical foe. Our number one geopolitical foe is China. They're bringing that fentanyl over into Mexico. The cartels, these transnational narco-criminal terrorist organizations, are working with the Chinese to refine it. And what we end up having each and every day, because I've been reading a few reports, 8 to 10 times a day, fentanyl is flown across the border into Texas using drones, which is so why you have to see this as an insurgency, which is why you need to get your National Guard forces on the ground so that they're in the weeds, they're doing the constant and consistent patrolling, that they're interdicting these infiltration routes. And oh, by the way, let's see if we can do this. Here's, let's say, the Rio Grande River or something along like that. Okay, up here, we got Texas. Now here, of course, we got Mexico. Guess what? There are infiltration routes. There are tunnels coming across into Texas from Mexico, an estimation of 200 to 232 of these tunnels. How do we know that? Because Texas Representative August Pfluger has a piece of legislation addressing the issue. Again, we're dealing with an insurgency, not just a bunch of criminals. We're dealing with a wholehearted effort to invade Texas and to topple Texas, which of course means that you topple the United States of America. And so it's so important that you have a governor that understands this foreign policy, especially when you have a Biden administration that has completely abdicated its role, its duty, its responsibility by the Constitution to defend the sovereignty of the great state of Texas and in turn protect it from this insurgency that is going on along our border. So what must we do? Again, we've got to create that border control zone. Again, we've got to get our National Guard forces down there. Again, we have to take those constitutional duties that the Biden administration is refusing to do, and we have to execute those constitutional duties, which means arrest, detain, and deport people. See, right now, the word is already 80,000 more Haitians and others that are on their way to Texas. That has to stop. Remember, it was a couple of months ago, and we let in about 450. Remember that gate that was opened up down at Del Rio? We were there. We saw it happen. And then the next thing you know, we get 10,000 to 15,000. Secretary of Homeland Security, Mayorkas, said that. And he also said that 1 in 5 of them have some sickness or illness or whatever. None of these people are being told they have to get a jab in the arm, but we do. And now we're looking at that number. And over the past few months, we have seen anywhere upwards of 200,000 apprehensions along our border. But now the estimates for this month of October is that we could see an increase to 400,000 illegal immigrant apprehensions. Now, apprehension does not mean deportation. This is what's happening. And that's why this is an insurgency. It's not just about people that want to come here and seek asylum. I'm sure there's a lot of people on the south side of Chicago that would like to seek some asylum away from the crime and all the violence that they see. But these Haitians that are coming here, they aren't even coming from Haiti. They're coming from South America. Why? Because all of a sudden the green light came on and the people that are part of an insurgency are allowing them to cross. Let's go back and talk about China though. When we talk about foreign policy and foreign influence. Now, Texas has a thing that we passed in this last 87th legislative session called the Texas Infrastructure Protection Act, which means that basically we can stop any type of influence that a foreign nation that is an adversary to us has. But we got to enforce those things. Why is that so important? How many people here know about these two organizations? Huawei and ZTE. Huawei and ZTE are two telecommunications companies that are controlled by the Communist Chinese Party, the CCP. Let's make sure we call them as they are. I'm standing here right now in our campaign headquarters in Richardson, Texas. Guess what is maybe about a mile away from us? The headquarters of ZTE right here in Texas. A telecommunications firm controlled by the Chinese, right here in one of the growing tech hubs in the state of Texas. Outside of Austin is here in Richardson, Texas. Huawei, they have a headquarters not too far away from here in Plano, Texas. Now, if we're serious about the Texas Infrastructure Protection Act, then why do we have ZTE and Huawei, two telecommunications companies owned by the Communist Chinese Party, right here in North Texas? That's why you need to have a governor that understands the ramifications and consequences of foreign policy. Not to mention the fact that we also have a gentleman who once was an officer in the People's Liberation Army, and he's bought up a large swath of rangeland down near Laughlin Air Base. That's right there in Del Rio. And what's the importance of that? Laughlin Air Base is a huge training base for Air Force pilots. And this same individual wants to put up 700-foot tall wind turbines right along the flight path where we're training our Air Force officers. We're facing an insurgency. We have to deal with the transnational narco-criminal terrorist organization that we call the cartels. The cartels will eventually work with Taliban, Al-Qaeda, ISIS. They're already working with Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas. The cartels, the fentanyl, methamphetamines, and marijuana. The fentanyl comes from China, the Communist Chinese Party. The Chinese have Huawei and ZTE already operating here in the state of Texas. We already know that we have 232 tunnels that are coming across. August Pfluger is working on that. We are now looking at 80,000 illegal immigrants coming in here. They're stacked up, ready to go. The foreign minister of Panama has already warned us. We already saw 450, now 10 to 15K, because we're not stopping them. And the estimations for October, another 400,000. And none of them are being asked to get a shot in the arm. That's why you need a governor that understands foreign policy and the ramifications and the consequences that it has on the state of Texas, which has a border with a foreign country that is really a destabilized, failed state of 1,254 miles. Learn more about this at West4 Texas. That's West4Texas.com. God bless you.